share it online, so I'm going to go ahead and start that. Each speaker will be focusing on a different way you can be more sustainable at home. And we will do questions at the end of each session. We'll do about 10 minutes for that. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen if you will pop your questions in there. And then later today, I will post everything on YouTube if you want to go back and reference any of the presentations. So our first presenter for today is Harley Bryant with the Knoxville Utility Board. Harley is the Customer Support Service Supervisor at KUB and the lead presenter for the Energy and Water Savings Workshop that KUB delivers to the community. So Harley, I'm going to stop sharing my screen if you want to go ahead and share yours. Harley, I think your sound isn't working.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Well, we got a video. We recorded a video of our presentation that we typically do in person at the beginning of the pandemic, just in anticipation that we wouldn't be doing a lot of in-person interviews or in-person presentations. So I'll go ahead and get that started, but along the way, I may stop it with additional tips. But if you got questions, certainly we can answer those at the end as well. So I'll go ahead and get this going and see if we can get it to play.
Welcome to our KUB's Virtual Energy Savings Workshop. We're going to show you some tips how you can save energy at home and try to keep those utility bills low. We've got a few folks here. I'm Harley Bryant. We've got a few folks from our Customer Support Department that will be demonstrating some displays and showing you some of the different things you can do to practically save on your energy at home. One thing we really want you all to know about is where energy goes and kind of what in your home is using the most electricity. If you have large appliances, if you've got a lot of heating and air conditioning, those things are really going to affect your bills. So we want to help you all to understand where that's going and also give you guys an opportunity to get an energy savings kit where you can start on some of these tips yourself at home. One of the biggest things obviously is knowing what goes into your utility bill and why your bill is high or low. So you think about your home and what all goes into it. In about $100 worth of energy each month, you'll see it's broken down like this. You'll see about $55 of that $100 is your heating or cooling. About $20 is your water heating. Probably about $8 or so of that $100 is going to be for your lighting, and laundry and other miscellaneous usage takes up the rest. So we really want you guys to focus on how you can attack and minimize the usage on those largest appliances, your heating and air conditioning, your water heating, and then also looking at the secondary usages as well. Again, one of the biggest things is to kind of know where that energy is going, what's running, when it's not. Kind of think of your heat pump is probably one of the biggest expenses in your home, heating or cooling, and typically that's a combination device. It's your heat pump in the wintertime, it's your air conditioning in the winter, and you want to know where those savings can come in, where that usage is at. Other things that use electricity in the home is going to be your drying, your television sets, VCRs, those type of things. How much electricity those use. If you're still using a VCR, well, you may need to upgrade a little bit. But about $106 a month just for washing the clothes, and where those energy costs are going. Your lighting, well, that's only about $2 if you're using an LED bulb 21 hours a week. So what is the most bang for your buck when you're trying to save on energy? So what can you do to influence your energy costs? You think about when you want to save fuel in your vehicle, you're taking a long trip, you set your car on cruise control, and you go at 70 or whatever it is, and you're saving fuel because you're not constantly speeding up and slowing down, speeding up and slowing down. Your heating and air conditioning and your water heating kind of has the same function. You've got a thermostat at the house. You set your thermostat at a certain temperature, and it's on cruise control. It's going. It's going to bring it down to 74 degrees or 78 degrees if you're trying to cool your house, or it's going to bring your heat up to 68 or 70, wherever you get your thermostat set. That is going to be, where you're at, and that's going to give you your maximum savings. Now, if you're moving that up and down a lot, that can definitely influence your bill. Your outside temperatures. If it's 90 degrees outside and you've got your air conditioning on 65, it's going to take a lot more to bring it down to 65 than it would be if it's only 75 degrees outside. Kind of like if you're in cruise and you've got that car set at 70 and you hit a big hill, it's going to take more fuel to get up that hill. You'll still be at 70, you'll still be going the same speed, but it's going to take more energy to get there. So you got to have a choice of what you're going to do with your thermostats and where you're setting those. The recommended settings on heat in the wintertime is 68 degrees on heat, and summertime is 78 degrees for cooling. So that's basically what TVA and the Energy Department says set your thermostats at. Many people can probably tolerate the 68 degrees in the wintertime, but 78 degrees in the summer is pretty uncomfortable. So you look at what is going to happen the more you lower that thermostat. If you look at the display here, you see for about every degree that you decrease your thermostat, you're costing yourself about 3% more. So if you bring your thermostat down to, say, 72 degrees in the summertime, that's going to bring your cost for cooling your home up about 18% beyond what the recommended settings are. So kind of knowing where those temperatures are affecting your bill, that's going to be a big impact. Another thing is with your heat pumps and your air conditioning systems, is make sure you have regular maintenance. Just like in your vehicle, you want to make sure your oil filters are changed and everything, make sure it's running tip-top. Same thing with your air conditioning. If you don't change your filters out, that's going to restrict the airflow, so that's something you should change monthly. You can use your utility bill as a reminder or other monthly reminders to change your filters. Schedule a checkup, a fall checkup and a spring checkup. As you're going from the heating season into cooling or cooling into heating, it's good to have that unit checked out. If you do go with the newer AC system, you probably want to look at going with the higher SEER rating that you can get at the time, that just get the most energy efficient that you can get at that point. So some of the things that cause us problems with our heating and air conditioning systems, where is going to furniture blocking your registers, leaks in the furnace and filter slot. These type of things are going to cause you to have that air not coming into the area you want it to be, not into the conditioned space, but going out into your attic or crawl space. So you have leaky insulation, supply leaks, and kinks in ductwork. So those are things that you want to address, and we've got some examples here to kind of show you how those things can leak, and we've got Clint here that's going to come and show us what those can do.
Okay, so we'd like to start with ductwork and kind of work our way down. This is important because if you don't really get this buttoned up and pinned down, then everything downstream is not going to be quite as effective. So a couple things we'd like to talk about with the ductwork. This type of open ductwork you're going to find basement, in the crawl space, possibly in your garage. It'll be non-insulated. If it's insulated, you're generally fine. So when you look at this ductwork and you take a look at all the connections, the straight connections or the elbow pieces, you want to make sure they're sealed up with either a mastic putty or an aluminum foil type tape. Okay, both of these are UL 181 rated and will work fine. Just do not use regular duct tape because it can't handle the moisture and it'll fall off eventually over time. So once you find these connections and you've sealed them up, although this one may look good, we'll demonstrate how it loses air here in just a second. Find them, wrap them up, putty or aluminum foil tape. And once you do that, this demonstration will show you what difference that can make. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on some air. So we've got air flowing through all the pipe, and I have two registers on the side. Both of these registers are wide open. Okay, so what you'll see with our little smoke machine, what you may be able to see. Okay, so you can see, hopefully you can see it on camera, we've got some smoke flowing. So down here, you can see it's not really pushing the smoke away from the register. Okay, when you come up here, you can see how much more sealed pipe airflow you're going to get up in there. And again, both of these are wide open, so just from that you can see how important it is to have these sealed up. And again, it's something that's out of sight, out of mind, so you do need to go look for it. And even if you have straight lines connections that don't have tape, they may look good, but they're not. We're losing air right through here. So very important. So check them. So moving on from the ductwork, we like to roll right into the insulation part. You've got 3 different types of insulation. You've got fiberglass, cellulose, and foam. They're all designed to do about the same thing, but some are a little better than others. One thing looking at insulation you want to pay attention to is the R value. The higher the R value, the denser the material will be, therefore it will be more effective. So we recommend around an R35 to an R38. So a couple of demonstrations on the fiberglass, on the insulation. First one is we've got some heat going down here. It's on down here and it's running at about 115 degrees down here. So as the air's flowing up into here, we're going to see how much of that heat that it can keep out. So down here at 115, fiberglass, which is the, generally speaking, the less dense of all 3, we're at about 70 degrees. So that fiberglass at 70, cellulose is looking to be at about 65 degrees. And foam, about the same, 65. So you can see the difference in maintaining the heat and the conditioned air that you've created. And all that has to do with R value. The higher the R value, the better any 3 will work. The second demonstration, we'll run some air to demonstrate the density of it. And as you see up here, this ball rose straight up, so the air is basically flowing right through the fiberglass. Generally, when you see fiberglass, you're going to see a ton of it piled up, maybe 2-3 feet high, and that's why. You can see it's letting the air flow right through. Cellulose and foam both keep the ball down, no airflow's coming through. So even at the same R value as the fiberglass, these still perform better. So if you have the opportunity to get cellulose or foam, depending on where you put it, you can't really put foam in an attic. You'll find it lots of times blown in between the wall studs behind sheetrock. Cellulose you can blow an attic. Fiberglass, generally you'll find fiberglass piled up in the attic and also underpinned, between floor joists and things like that. But it's all, about the cost. But again, if you can go cellulose or foam, we would recommend that at about R35.
All right, so those are some examples of what once you've got your heating and air conditioning system operating as it should, some of the things in the background you want to make sure they're taken care of so that the heat and air is coming where you want it to be rather than going to the outside. Some other examples are duct sealing. You want to make sure things are sealed up inside the home, where they can escape. And we've got some examples of what you need to do with sealing. Holes and cracks, large intrusions in your home where plumbing is coming in and wiring. Those are areas that naturally airflow can go in or out. And also critters can come in and out. We've got a couple examples here with AC vents, doors, windows, holes in different areas of the house. And here's some plumbing intrusions you can see where as the plumbing comes in the home or exits the home, they cut that hole out, put the pipe in, and they walk away. So if you can seal up around those areas, it's going to keep the cool air in your home or the hot air in your home, depending on the season, and also going to keep some critters out of your home as well. So it's very important to do that. We've got some examples of how that can reduce your airflow, similar to the duct sealing demonstration. That airflow can stay inside the home much better with having things sealed up. So here's an example with that Sam's going to show us where you can seal things up and keep things inside your home.
Okay. So the first couple, I'm going to turn this on here. This first display shows where we can avoid some air infiltration. We've done first 2 displays have talked about conditioned air getting out or air escape. Now we don't want to also concern ourselves, or we want to concern ourselves with air infiltration. So if it's 90 degrees like it is today outside, you don't want the hot, humid air coming in to your house to make your air conditioner work that much harder. So a couple of places where people don't think out of sight, out of mind, and realize air will intrude your conditioned air are just something such as electrical sockets, electrical outlets. Right here we have air simulated, and these would be on an exterior wall, but down here on the bottom you've got gaskets to prevent if an appliance is not using that electrical socket or outlet, but also you have some streams here. That's sealed properly with a foam gasket. I guess that's excuse me. These foam gaskets are real simple. All you would do is take off this plate, one little screw here, put one of these foam gaskets behind there, seal it back up. You can see these strips aren't moving on the bottom because it has the gasket there to avoid the air coming in on an exterior wall. Interior wall is not going to matter as much. But also here up top, you don't have a seam or a gasket behind it. So if you were fair with that, you see how the unwanted air is just coming in through the air socket or the electrical outlets. Another source of air infiltration would be, follow the cord up here. This one up at the top represents one that's not sealed. As Harley had mentioned, around pipes and wires that are run through the frame of the house, they're not properly sealed. This one up here, you can see the air is just pushing that ball up. Here on this side, it's been properly sealed, so through these pipes or wires, so the ball's not moving. The air is not escaping or getting brought in. Another thing that we want to see is, I guess that'll be on this display. I'll wait. You can put air or caulk, something like this, just a foam sealant, comes in a spray can. You can put that around the wires and pipes where the holes are coming. Holes are created from the pipe and wires. And then these foam things, again, very easy to put on. So good way to prevent extra air coming into your house that you don't want. This next one here is kind of same principle, but you can see this more around doors. I can turn it back on this side. So same type thing. You've got the air coming in from the outside doors. This top door where it's not moving, it has weather stripping. Weather stripping around the door so you can't get the unwanted air inside. Down here, it's not sealed, so it's coming in. One other way to see this is if you can sit in your room, living room perhaps, where your front door is, and if you see light penetrating through the cracks, then you know it's not properly sealed. So again, we said today, like if it's 90, you don't want that hot, humid air coming in, but even more, maybe you feel the effect more when it's 20 degrees outside and you're paying to have your house nice and warm for you. You certainly don't want that cold air coming in. So it works both ways. You don't want the unwanted air coming in. Another thing, a lot of doors will have weather stripping. And weather stripping not only will help prevent some of that air coming in underneath your door, but it will also keep out unwanted critters, insects, a lot of things that you don't want in the house. You can get different types of weather stripping from your basic Home Depot or Walmart. Some of them are more simple to install than others, but very helpful to keep that unwanted air out.
So you can see as you're paying to heat or cool your home, some examples of, once you've paid to heat or cool your home, you don't want that air to go out to the outside. You're not paying for the outside, as our parents always told us. We're not paying to heat outside. With Sam's last example, even a 1/8 inch gap underneath your door, that's equivalent to having a 5-inch hole drilled in your wall. So you wouldn't drill a hole in the wall, just let air go in and out. Make sure your doors and everything are sealed up also. Some other things to think about, beyond your heating and air conditioning. Heating and air conditioning is your biggest user of electricity in your home. That's, like I said, 55 out of every $100 is heating and air. And you want to make sure you're doing everything you can to keep that inside your home. But there's another very large appliance in your home that's always there, always heating, which is your water heater. And what do you want to do to keep that usage down as much as possible? Well, you've got it set at a constant temperature setting. There's a thermostat on there. The recommended is about 135 degrees. You can, the factory setting is about 135. You can bring that down to 120 and still be comfortable, still have plenty of hot water. So that right there is going to save you just by bringing that 15 degrees difference. Another thing you can do is keep an eye out on how you're washing your laundry. Do you have to wash everything in hot or warm? You know, a lot of the washing machines now are designed for cool or cold water. A lot of the detergents are designed for cool or cold water. So you can kind of look at that. Also make sure you're washing full loads of laundry, not partial loads, to reduce how much water you're using. Same with your dishwasher. You know, make sure you're using full run of dishwasher. Don't just do a partial load and that type of thing. In the summertime, you know, if you think about it, you can, and this isn't really water savings, energy savings, you can, you know, maybe line dry your clothes, save on some of that drying, some of the heat from your dryer. But certainly taking shorter and cooler showers, don't take a lot of hot showers, do things to reduce how much that water heater has to kick on. Think about where your water heater is located. If your water heater is in an attic or a crawl space, not so much of an issue in the summertime, but in the wintertime, those are unconditioned spaces. So if there is, you know, your water heater's there, you want to make sure it's insulated well, make sure that the pipes coming off the water heater, excuse me, are well insulated. So you have some insulation foam you can put on your hot water supply line to make sure that water's staying hot longer to get into your home. So make sure those things are taken care of. That'll help keep that water heater from having to kick on so frequently, and the less time it kicks on, the less electricity you'll be using as a result. Insulate the first 6 feet of line, you know, hot and cold, or, you know, the more you can, the better. Use less heated water. You can install aerators on your faucets and your sinks, in the bathroom and the showers. That will give you the same feeling of water coming down, but you'll be using less because it'll be aerated. Make sure you're using low flow fixtures. Most homes now have low flow fixtures in different parts of the home, but if you don't have low flow fixtures, get those and install them. There's actually a few that are in the kit that will help you retrofit some of your devices as well. So beyond energy, you certainly, like I said, the biggest things is heating and cooling, water heating. Lighting is a big chunk of that, and we've got Brian to give us a couple examples.
I'm going to pause it right there just for a second, just to add a couple things. You know, as we're going into the winter months, right now, if you haven't already for the season, it's a very important time to have your heat pump inspected, make sure that everything's operating as it should. You know, we've gone through a time, you know, this last several weeks where the temperatures have been very mild, kind of nice fall temperatures, so you're probably using very little heat, very little air conditioning, and that's the best time to have a low bill. But as we get into the colder months, you're going to be using the heat more frequently. Even if you leave your thermostat at one set temperature, you know, the outside air is going to definitely have an influence on that. So the colder it gets this winter, you know, the more that heat pump or furnace is going to be kicking on, and so the more energy you're going to be using. So it's very important to have it inspected at the beginning of the season, make sure everything's up to snuff, and while you have a contractor looking at that, they can look at your insulation, look for duct work that may be falling, some of those things that we talked about in the first part of this presentation, and just kind of make sure that you're ready to go for the winter, because you don't want to be surprised when the temperatures do dip below, you know, typically about 35 degrees is when those heat pumps become less efficient because they cannot draw any heat from the outside air and relying on straight electric heat. You know, this weekend may be an example. It's supposed to get a little bit colder at night. You might look to see or might hear your unit kicking on more frequently. But definitely get those inspected, and we'll give you a few more tips here as well as we go on.
Examples on the lighting and what you can do to save there.
Lighting gets a lot of attention when you do energy conservation. And down here at the bottom, we can kind of go over some examples. This is your standard 60-watt incandescent bulb, kind of the old-fashioned, the old-style bulb. And it's right about 60 watts. Now you'll see more of the popular styles now, the CFLs. And what we can do is one of those, an equivalent to the incandescent. It's running about 13, a little bit less than 13 watts. And then you'll see the new LEDs, which are becoming very popular. They're around 10. So using these light bulbs, switching from the old incandescent bulbs to the new CFLs and even the LEDs now, you're going to save yourself quite a bit. And you can also, this can kind of demonstrate, you can have a mixture, even doing 4 bulbs here of the mixtures, still you're about 45 watts versus the 60 on one incandescent bulb. So try to replace these. You don't have to replace them all at once, and as you can see by this comparison, you can mix and match. LEDs have become very inexpensive recently. Prices have come down. A lot of customers are switching to the LEDs. Another interesting feature is these incandescents, they heat up very quick and it's very hot, and that can cause some issues, especially with the LEDs nowadays. They're very cool to the touch. No matter how long they're on, they're cool to the touch. So really a rule of thumb is once one of the old light bulbs, your incandescents, or even your CFLs start to go bad, replace them with an LED. You don't have to go out and do them all at once if cost is an issue, but just replace them and you'll definitely be saving yourself some costs. Another thing with the LED bulbs that the other ones cannot do, we'll talk a little bit about the brightness of the lights now. You've got the technology with the LEDs, and so you'll see these are in kelvins. So the brighter the light, the higher they are in Kelvin. And you can see a warm, so something for your living room or your bedroom, you're going to kind of want a more softer LED bulb. A cool white, so if you're in your kitchen or workspace, you're going up the spectrum here. You're about, anywhere from 3,500 to 4,100 kelvins, so you can see you're getting up there. Now, if you need a workshop or you need something reading or somewhere where you need detail, you may want to go with a natural daylight. You're upwards of 6,500 kelvins now, so you can see how much brighter they are. But that's the technology the LEDs allow now. You can get different lights, different brightness, depending on what area you need.
Thanks, Brian. So you can see with all of the different, appliances, there your lighting, and your heating and cooling, and your water heating. There's a big chunk of energy that's being used each month on your bill. And what can we do to bring that down? So some very good examples there. One thing people don't think about is how much other appliances are plugged in. How much are we using on a daily basis? At one time, several decades ago, you can look back and see you might just have 1 or 2 appliances plugged in, maybe a television and a radio as far as additional appliances. Now you fast forward 40 years, you see now you got a television in every room, a TV, a computer in every room. You've got DVRs, cable boxes, gaming systems, an iPad, probably 5 for each kid in the house. All these different appliances add up to where the average home now has about 26 different appliances plugged in at any given time, electronic appliances. And those are always using energy. They're in standby mode. They're just sitting there. You're at work, they're still sitting there plugged in and charging or running, recording your favorite TV show, whatever it is. So think about those electronic devices, 26 different electronic devices plugged in at home at any given time, and how much energy is that using? Now, it's not the same amount of what you would use on your heat pump or your water heater, but it's a significant amount. The U.S. Department of Energy puts together a guide, talks about phantom load and all these different appliances that are plugged in, and it says all those devices adds up to 43 billion kilowatt hours in the United States. So that's a huge amount of electricity just with these, not necessarily non-essential, but just different appliances that are not used all the time. Average household is about $28 per year in what they call phantom load. You got these devices plugged in, they're not using, they're still using electricity. So what can you do to reduce that? You can try to reduce that by putting devices on power strips, so you can cut them all off at one time when you're not using them. Have timers to make sure that they're completely off rather than going into standby mode, and just unplugging them when you don't need them if possible. One other thing you can do when you're exchanging appliances, big appliances, refrigerators, different things like that, they're certainly expensive, but you also think about how can we reduce our savings, or how can we reduce our costs with those. When you're replacing your refrigerator or your stove, whatever it is, replace them with the most energy efficient device you can at the time. Maybe pay an extra $50 to get the Energy Star rated appliance, and then you can recycle that old appliance. Don't keep that old refrigerator on your back porch for storing Gatorade and Pops and everything like that. Take and recycle it, because each refrigerator uses about $10 to $20 per month in electricity just for a refrigerator. So if you multiply that and add a second inefficient refrigerator on your back porch, now you got $30 to $40 in electricity being used, rather than having just one efficient refrigerator. So that uses, and they're saying here, basically an old refrigerator uses about twice as much as an energy efficient one. So here's a few energy myths, some things you want to think about. Turning on an electronic device and turning it back off uses more electricity than just leaving it on. That's a myth. And just like we talk about lights, okay, some people say just leave the lights on, don't turn them off and on all the time. You're using more energy by turning it off and on. Well, no, if you're not using a room, turn the lights off, because naturally, common sense can tell you that that's off. It's not using any electricity at all. If it's on, it's using electricity. So yeah, use that kind of common sense and turn things off when you're not using them. Electronic timers on water heaters, those don't necessarily save you, because that water has to heat back up, but you can think about getting an on-demand water heater or something along those lines. Some folks will say if you set back the temperature in the home, it's going to take more energy to bring it up. Well, in most cases, that's not true, because you're going to set it back to an amount that's not going to have a long recovery. If you have an electric heat pump, for example, you set it back 2 degrees or so, bringing it back up is not going to cost more to run. If you have a gas furnace, it's not going to cost any more to take that down from 50 to 60 as it would to go from 60 to 80. It's going to be the same amount of gas being used. Ducts must be cleaned regularly. And that's kind of an energy myth. You see a lot of signs about cleaning your ducts and make sure those things are taken care of. It's a sealed system. If everything is operating as it should, those ducts shouldn't be getting dirty. All these different things that Clint was talking about, putting mastic around, making sure all those things are sealed up. If that's sealed, then those ducts shouldn't be having any dirt or dust inside them. Duct tape, we all see duct tape for everything else. Duct tape is not for ducts in your appliances. That's for, making costumes and doing different things. You want to make sure you're using the proper type of tape for your heating and air conditioning system. If you just use duct tape, that's going to be affected by humidity and heat, and it will not be effective. Within 6 months to a year, it'll be falling and hanging down and not doing what you intended for it to do. Another thing is, the larger the air conditioner, the better it is. You might have your air conditioner going out the first hot day of summer. Salesman comes in and says, hey, you need to get this big 5-ton air conditioning unit for your home, and it'll cool you down like great. Well, if your home is only rated for a 2.5-ton unit, and you're going with a larger system, it's going to short cycle, and it's going to cause more problems, and will not cool you down effectively, and will cost you more money to do what you need to have done. So make sure you're getting a heating and air conditioning system that's sized for your home. You can actually look for TVA qualified contractors that go by proper sizing techniques to make sure that unit is sized properly. So beyond energy, we want to look at water savings as well. Water is a very big part of our homes, a big part of our lives, and that can certainly be a big increase on your utility bill as well. In some areas, your utilities are combined with your water and your electric, and everything is all on one bill. Some areas, you got different bills each month for coming from different companies. But the biggest point you want to look at is, where is that water going? About 40% of your water each month is going for bathing, bathing and faucets, that type of thing. It's just going right back down the drain. About 25% is for commodes, 17% is for cleaning your clothes, and then about 20% for dishwashing, outdoor uses, and miscellaneous usage. So what can you do to reduce that water? We talked about showers already a little bit on the energy side, but you can take and put aerators in, take shorter showers, put faucet aerators on your taps to reduce the amount of water coming out. Make sure you're checking for leaks. If you have a small leak, it's not going to fix itself. So fix those leaks as soon as you find them, and make those repairs to prevent your bill from getting higher. In many areas, you're also paying for a wastewater bill on top of your water bill. So if you have a large water bill, you're also going to have a large sewer bill to treat that water. And one example on the KKB bill is how that's billed. KKB bills in CCFs. So 1 unit of water is a CCF, which is about 750 gallons of water. So when you look at your KKB bill and says, hey, I did all right, I only used 15 CCF this month. Well, that 15 CCF is times 750. So that's a very significant amount of water. That's 11,000 gallons of water in 1 month time. And where's that water going? So you want to be able to make sure you're understanding what your bill comes in at, what the total water charges on your bill, and how that breaks down. And then coincidentally, you also have a wastewater bill in many cases that corresponds to that. You know, in this case here, this example, you're looking at 15 CCF, which is 11,000 gallons, and you know, on your bill, you'll have that broken down for you as well. With leaks, probably the biggest cause of high consumption in a home is going to be a leak. It's going to be a leaky pipe. It's going to be a leaky commode. It's going to be maybe a leaky irrigation system. So you want to make sure you're inspecting your pipes for leaks. Look for exposed pipes, galvanized pipes, copper pipes. Doesn't matter what kind of pipes in your home. Could be PVC, but those could very well have a leak on them. Look for joints where they've been sweated joints, like in the copper. You might see some small drips there. You might see exposed galvanized pipes and different pipes that are rusty. That rust is an indication there's been water flowing there and there's some leaks. So try to find and fix those leaks as soon as you identify them. And you know, here's an example of a water heater that's leaking. This water heater leaked for just a couple days, and just leaked for a couple days, and out of a small braided hose on the top of the water heater. That water leak caused the usage to increase by a significant amount in just a couple days. If that had continued to go on without getting fixed, then your bill would just be tremendously going up. One thing you can check if you're a KKB customer, we've got an online portal. You can take a look to see where your usage changes from day to day, as in this example here. If you have a leak like with the water heater or something else that shows a large increase in usage, and it continues on for more than 48 hours, KKB's automated system in many cases will call you and say, hey, you've got continuous consumption. We don't know where that water leak is, but you might want to go check to see if it's truly a leak. If you got a hose on the backyard, what it is. So you can go back and check to see where that usage is at. This example here, that leak ran for 3 days and is about $9 a day in water usage, where this average here is only showing $3 a day. So it's a huge increase in water by leaving that leak to run. Another area of leaks is commodes. Another area of leaks is commodes, and if your toilet's leaking, a lot of times you don't see water on the ground. It's just going to continue to flow right through the commode to the system, and you're not seeing it. Here's an example of a customer who had a toilet leak, and it leaked for over about 3 days, and their usage went up just in that 3-day time period by a very significant amount, $130 in usage in that short amount of time, because of the water and the wastewater. And you don't see it, it just goes right back down. So when you do find that leak, you want to have that leak repaired promptly, because the longer it goes, if you wait till your next bill, it's just going to increase that much more. If you have a water or wastewater leak that you do find and repair during your bill cycle, contact KKB back, and we'll go ahead and give you a leak credit if possible to kind of adjust some of that amount on your bill. We got a demonstration of a commode, and one of the most common leaks that KKB gets called about is a commode leak. We got a demonstration to show where some of those leaks are at and what you can do to repair those quickly.
As Holly was saying, one of our biggest leaks that we customers have are in their toilets. A lot of times hard to hear it, definitely hard to see it sometimes, especially if it's in a bathroom or an area where you don't go to too much, maybe a downstairs basement bathroom. So it's very important to be checking. And a lot of stuff inside the toilet here, it can wear out, especially nowadays. A lot of it's plastic. But one of the biggest issues is your flapper valve. It's just a rubber piece. Over time it'll disintegrate. You've got plastic handles that can stick, that can hang up. Chains can get hung up, especially if they're too long, and especially if they're in the open position, water just keeps running and running and running. And sometimes it is kind of hard to hear. A lot of these parts in here are very easy to replace. You can do it yourself. Maybe take a couple dollars. Any hardware store will have this. They even have a whole kit. If you're in there replacing one part, you may want to just replace the whole thing while you're in there. Very inexpensive, $20 at the most in most cases. And also another thing is your tank bolts can leak, and you definitely want to check those out too. So one way you can check if you think you might have a possible toilet issue, leak, toilet issue, just put some regular food coloring in the tank of the toilet. Just lift up the lid, pour some drops in there, maybe wait overnight or a long period of time. Don't flush the toilet, come back, open up the bowl, and if there's food coloring in there, that lets you know that there is some water escaping. Probably got a running toilet, should get some of these parts in here may not be functioning properly.
Like Brian said, a lot of those parts, they're plastic, they wear out over time, and you may never even hear that you have a leak. You may be, KKB may call you, get an automated call, say, hey, we're seeing continuous consumption. You look through your whole house, and if you have a second toilet that's not used as frequently, that may be where the leak is at. So definitely want to check those things out. That's something that can save you some money, not only on your bill, but also by not having to call a plumber. If you go and check your commodes first time you think you've got a leak in something you can fix yourself, you're going to save yourself a plumber bill, which can be, depending on the plumber, it can be more expensive than others. So, just another thing you want to do overall is make sure you're looking for energy upgrades inside your home. You can get a in-home energy audit. Currently, TVA is offering in-home or even virtual energy audits where they can go through your home, take a look at things you can save inside your home with an e-score, and kind of really score your house between 0 and 10 to kind of see, okay, have I got the most energy efficient home I can get, or is there some improvements that we can do? And with those e-scores, they try to give you the improvements that you can do that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. So go and spend this money to fix this, and it's going to save you X amount on your bill. If you go and do this, it's going to cost you this much to fix this, but you're only going to save this amount. So they try to prioritize that list, fix these things first, and here's estimated how much you're going to save. And you can go online to www.2escore.com and request an in-home energy audit. You can call KKB and request an in-home energy audit, and we can make sure that gets set up for you. With the presentation, you get a energy savings kit that goes along with some of the things we talked about today. Also with the in-home energy audit, you get some of these things, but you get a couple of LED light bulbs, so you can kind of start saving on your lighting. You get some caulk and some seal, so you can try to seal up some of those gaps, like what they were talking about with sealing, making sure that your cool air stays inside the home and your hot air stays outside the home, and depending on the season. And there's several other items in here you can use. Some of the wall ceilings for sealing up your outlets are included in here. And a very handy device is Energy Wheel. You can kind of select the appliance. Maybe you want to know how much is this appliance using. You can select the appliance and say, for example, my 42-inch LED TV, what's the average cost of that to run that? And it'll kind of show you based on the different rates, the average rates throughout the valley, and how much that's going to cost you. So for example, 42-inch LED TV is basically costing you about 27 cents or $27 per year to run that straight out. So you kind of give you a good idea, especially if you're trying to demonstrate to a family member inside your home, hey, turn that off, here's how much it's costing, and that comes in a kit as well. So going through that energy audit and going through this presentation will allow you to get one of those kits by filling out the participation agreement. You can get a kit, and when you have the energy audit, they also include some more light bulbs along with that. And that concludes our workshop, and thank you all for joining us. If you have any questions, please let us know.
All right. Well, if you guys have questions and everything, certainly let me know. And there's a lot in that presentation that we go over quite a bit. So if you guys have anything now's the time to shout it out.
So if you do have questions, go ahead and pop it in the Q&A, and I will read them aloud. We do have one already, Harley. It's if you have electronics plugged into a power strip and then turn that power strip off when it's not in use, will it still be using energy if the power strip is still plugged into the wall?
And once you've actually turned that power switch off on the power strip, that's just like turning your switch off on the wall itself. So that does cut any power from flowing through there. So that's usually a very efficient way to do it, especially if you have sensitive appliances that need a surge protector as well, because a lot of times those will double as a surge protector. So it's a very good way to use it in a quick way instead of having to go and unplug everything from the wall.
We'll see if any more questions come in.
But one thing I'd also just add, on the water presentation side of things, those leaks can go undetected for a while. You may not know you have a leak, and it can certainly, especially if you're in the KUB area or certain areas of town where the water and sewer bills are really high, just definitely want to find those and fix them as quick as possible, because it can add to an unseen part of your bill that you don't even realize is coming.
Okay. Another question that came in is, KUB does the new Green Match program, right? If so, can you explain that at all?
It is kind of a new program. It is similar to what we used to have through TVA, what was called green power blocks. And so you'd purchase a certain amount of green power, and you're offsetting what you're using. You're still using your same amount of electricity, but what you're doing is you're contributing to TVA purchasing more renewable energy. So from wind farms out west, or from solar farms and different things. So it's this kind of contributing to more of that renewable energy going onto the system.
Okay, and our next question is, do you have any information on how much blue light that can disrupt sleep are in LED lights? And is it worthwhile to reduce heat at night to say 55 degrees Fahrenheit? Those two questions.
As far as the lighting goes, I don't really have a lot of information about that. I mean, I have to sleep in total darkness myself, but I know there's probably some information online about LED lights and sleeping patterns and whatnot. I know the city of Knoxville has gone and changed all of their streetlights out to LEDs, and trying to reduce the spread of light to where the streetlights were only shining on the road versus shining in people's yards. As far as your thermostat at nighttime, it's very, I think it's efficient, especially in the wintertime, to turn your heat down when you're not needing it. So at nighttime, when you're in bed, you can drop your heat down on your thermostat and then bring it back up in the morning when you're getting going. One thing to be aware of is if you have an electric heat pump, you don't want to move that thermostat more than about 2 to 3 degrees at one time, because the recovery time is longer. So if you say go from 65 to 70 in the morning, that 5-degree difference, your heat pump's going to try to make that very quickly. So to do that, it's going to have to turn on your backup strip heat, which is more expensive, very inefficient, straight electric heat. So if you do adjust it back up, do it about 2 to 3 degrees at a time.
Okay, the next question is, what types of services are regionally available for residential energy audits, and what is the average cost for such?
Well, right now there's, we're working with TVA, and we can provide a free in-home energy audit, or else even a virtual energy audit where you actually take your phone and you walk with the person through your home. They can kind of look at things. So with COVID, it's kind of changed some things where, people are sensitive about having people in their house as well. But at the same time, you want to try to save energy. And with those energy audits, they're going to give you specific information on, here's some heat loss, here's some areas of your home that are affected. The in-home energy audit, they can actually do what they call a blower door test, and they'll check, they'll seal up your house, close your doors and hook up a fan, and they'll detect areas of your home where you have some of the air loss. So like in the video where Sam was talking about your doors and windows where you may need some weather stripping, that will point out those areas, say, hey, look, here's a significant area of air loss, and you can focus your efficiency on addressing that, instead of, a lot of people think in the past, well, I just need to get some new windows and that's gonna cut my bill down. Well, the new windows may look nicer, but that's not necessarily gonna be the biggest savings for your home.
Going back to the last question for heat, Alice asked, is it okay to drop 10 degrees on a gas furnace?
With that, I would say absolutely, because that gas furnace is going to bring back that heat much quicker than an electric heat pump would. You're not really going to be using a lot more gas to bring that bigger gap, to fill that bigger gap in temperature up. It's going to run for that significant time to get to that, from, say you go from 55 to 65 or 55 to 70, wherever you're going, it will run a little bit longer, but it's not going to be using any more gas than it would be to make up a 1 degree temperature difference.
The next question, is there an additional cost for participating in the Green Match program?
There is a cost. Basically what you're doing is, so you're still using, or still getting billed your normal amount for your electricity, but you're adding an additional offset for what you've used. It's kind of, it's kind of unfortunate you didn't have your carbon presentation, but along with that carbon presentation, it's kind of like a carbon match credit. You're paying TVA to purchase renewable energy. So you're giving them a portion, maybe it's a $2 per month or $8 per month, however much you're contributing to that renewable resource.
All right, does anyone have any more questions for Harley?
Well, if you guys come up with anything in the meantime or have any other questions, you can email me. My email address is harley.bryant@kub.org, and I'd be glad to try to help you out with any questions that come up. Also, like I said in the presentation, with those energy audits, we can schedule those for you, and those are through a resource that we have with TVA, and they come in and they do a very good job, and you get some free light bulbs and additional things with that kit as well.
So can people who watch this today, can they get the kit?
Yes, we'll work out. We'll get with Liz and get your information so we can get some way to. This is my first virtual presentation. We've had a few other folks do them, and they've arranged a way to get those kits out there. So we'll get from you, get the participant list, and we'll work that out.
Great. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in the Q&A. I popped Harley's email address in the chat if you'd like to reach out to him with any more questions. Thank you so much, Harley. That was a great presentation.
No problem, and hope you guys have a good afternoon and enjoy the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
All right, so our next presentation isn't until 11:30. So please feel free to check emails, do some work, get some coffee, and we'll reconvene at 11:30. You're welcome to leave the webinar. I'll have it open so you can always log back in. But Ashley Mays will be joining us at 11:30. Thank you. Going to resume the recording. So we are going to get into our next presentation today. Just a reminder, we'll do questions at the end. So if you just want to pop the questions into that Q&A at the bottom of the screen. Our next presenter is Ashley Mays. Ashley is an artist, printmaker, and director of the Museum of Infinite Outcomes. Her work crosses genres of art, ecology, pseudoscience, and game theory. She holds a Bachelor's of Fine Arts from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and completed her Master's of Fine Art in Printmaking at the University of Tennessee. Mays currently serves as an urban agricultural steward of the land at CAC Beardsley Community Farm and is an artist in residence with the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and occasionally moonlights as a landscape painter in black and white only. She is fond of geese, ducks, gardens, and those who keep them. Ashley, are you ready to share your screen? You're muted, Ashley.
It says that I cannot share my screen while the other participant is sharing.
Okay, I just canceled mine, so you should be able to go ahead and do it.
Great. All right, can you see it okay?
Yeah.
And you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you for the introduction. And once again, my name is Ashley Mays, and welcome to the Museum of Infinite Outcomes. Perched alongside the Chestnut Ridge in Knoxville, Tennessee, sits the Museum of Infinite Outcomes. We are a museum of conservation. We believe that to conserve something is to preserve it with care. As a museum of conservation, we're using that term in two ways. So in ecology, conservation is used to preserve biodiversity. And in physics, the law of conservation of energy shows us that no energy can be created or destroyed, that it can only change forms. So here at the museum, we celebrate these ever-changing forms and the underlying continuum from which all forms abound. As humans, we really rely on the ground to stand, and water to drink, and air to fill our lungs, and empty space to grow into. But before I get too far into all of that, I'd like to start off with some introductions. So the museum is collaborative in its very nature with both the human and more than human world. It's governed by the Board of Infinite Outcomes, and I'd like to take a quick moment to introduce those members. So first up here, we have Riley Douglas. Riley is a garden coordinator and color artist. Her work, alongside her role as the open space coordinator at KCDC with CAC AmeriCorps, Riley works to facilitate garden spaces at both the museum and with public housing and food vulnerable spaces. In her art practice, she uses natural dye to understand the colors of our natural environment. Here, what we're looking at is the cycle of indigo extraction with fermentation. And if you have any questions about natural dye, you'll have to ask Riley about those. At the museum, Riley grows her own dye and pigments from plants such as indigo, as we just saw, but also with goldenrod and sunflowers and roses and lavender and so many more. Her practice extends into eco-printing. She uses flowers, fungi, plants, and bugs, and here's an example of that on silk. Riley teaches K through 12 classes on food waste dyeing and traditional shibori classes to teens and adults. Through her practice, Riley aims to facilitate an appreciation and a creative practice using the dirt beneath our feet. And then next up, we have Logan Szymanowski. Szymanowski is a cartoonist, handyman, noisemaker, and our art and theological director at the museum. He is both the author and publisher of Gubbins, a Sunday morning comic strip that plays on the infinite monkey theorem that was first proposed by mathematician Emile Borel. His work with the museum, as well as in his cartoons, examines the lines of self-definition. His work celebrates contemporary and eternal phenomena, and when he's not drawing pictures or at the museum, he works with Aramont School of Arts and Crafts, maintaining their historic infrastructure. He is both an advocate of rocks and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And then there's me. I'm the director of the museum, as well as an artist, and as well as a printmaker. And I mentioned that I'm a printmaker because practicing printmaking has been really influential in the way that I'm thinking through ideas and the museum's exhibits. So first of all, what is printmaking? Printmaking is the process of making more than one of something. You can see in this example here, we have a letterpress. So these wooden blocks are arranged into information, and then posters are pulled as impressions from those blocks, and those are prints. My printmaking studies began when I was living in Chicago, and it was there that I ran into this exhibition called Prints and the Pursuit of Knowledge in Early Modern Europe. And this print here was a part of that exhibition. It's the work of Hans von Gerstoff from 1517. It's a book that carefully illustrates and describes the instruments used in cranial surgery. The particular spread that we're looking at is explaining how you would remove someone's skull from their brain in case shards of their skull fell into their brain, which is incredibly fascinating and terrifying. I'm not sure what this tool is that they're using to drill into the head. But the exhibition at large was a collection of maps and prints and books and sundials and star charts and anatomical prints that illustrate the relationship between printmaking and 16th century scientific pursuits. So here what we're looking at is one of the anatomical prints that was in the show. And you can see that it has this flap in between this woman's legs that you can lift up, and you can see what the inside of a human looks like. And so I did that. And here's what I found. I found that the insides of humans in 16th century Europe look differently than what I've been told the inside of a human looks like now. And this was really quite the predicament, because I've never actually looked inside of a human for myself. And it was this moment where I started to become very aware of my own dependence on physical information. I started to think of what kinds of symbols and stories and prints make up my own reality. For example, this is the work of Ali Watt. He's a Chicago-based artist who would take on an existing language, one that we all mostly understand, like a traffic sign. And then he would manipulate that language just a little bit and then place the symbol back out into the theater of reality. Prints straddle this line between theater and reality, between art and information dissemination. Printmaking tells us a story of authorship and of authority, such as who is running the press and who has the authority to run the press. Prints reveal to us the physical limitations of information. We can see a drawing shift as it moves through the press and onto paper. Printmaking shows us that information changes as it moves from material to material, like a game of telephone. This book is by William Ivins, and he writes about the role that prints have socially. Ivins was the first curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the Department of Prints. And in Prints and Visual Communication, he writes in depth about the importance of the physicality of prints. He uses this lovely example with Greek botanists, and I'm going to read it to you because I like it so much. It says, Greek botanists were fully aware of the limitation upon the use of handmade pictures as a mean of communicating exact ideas of shapes and colors. The reason for this limitation was that the Greeks, like their predecessors, and for many generations, their successors, had no way of making exactly repeatable pictures. And when handmade copies are made from handmade copies, it takes only a small number of copies for the final copy to bear practically no useful resemblance to the original. The meaning of this should be obvious as far as the concerns of the dissemination of accurate information about forms and shapes. So in this example, we're discussing botany and the difficulty that science faces when they cannot predictably repeat information. I made a print about this. So this print is titled A Game of Telephone, October 2017. And I made this print after I had some nice folks over to my studio and they played a game of telephone with me. I started the game by whispering into the ear of the person next to me. And the result here, what you're looking at, is the resulting transaction after the information moved from person to person to person. It is, grapes are writing in letter forms. Meanwhile, there's a pull tab right here where you can work your way back to the original, which is what I whispered into Billy's ear, which was that Greek botanists were fully aware of the limitation upon the use of handmade pictures as a means of communicating exact ideas of shapes and colors, and so on. You've heard it before. Practicing printmaking and looking at the history of prints demonstrates that prints have a material edge, and that information has a material edge, and that science has a material edge. And what I'm interested in is where that edge is and what exists beyond it. So now back to the museum. The museum operates in 3 primary capacities. As an open-air museum, our collection meanders through sun-filled gardens, collaborating with the outside world to demonstrate that the things in our reality can only exist in terms of relationships. Located in the residential neighborhood of Park Ridge, the museum features a publishing house, a library of infinite outcomes, and seasonal rotating exhibitions, as well as a collaborative programming involving both garden outreach and artists in collaboration. Our museum tour today will start with a few of our exhibits. Here, our first exhibit is the Avifauna. This is the museum's rotating exhibition of human-crafted homes for birds. If you find yourself in the Gatineau Park in Quebec, make sure to stop in the visitor center. There, they have a small plastic diorama of a beaver baffler. Beavers, who are quite common to the Gatineau landscape, build dams. And the dams create a moat. And these moats are how the beavers can sleep soundly at night, safe from predators. And farmers hate it. They hate the dams and they hate the beavers. The dams dry out their fields, and if the walls break, then the rushing waters suddenly and swiftly flood the fields. But a beaver baffler is a kind of tube that acts as an overflow valve. So it traverses the dam wall and allows for a consistent and predictable flow of water. You might see a small cage in the water, and this is a beaver baffler. The cage prevents the beaver from blocking up the tube, and both the beaver and the farmer can live comfortably together. A beaver baffler is a compromise. The Avifauna is our rotating exhibition of compromises. So each fall, we put out a call for bird homes, inviting folks to send their human-crafted homes for birds to the museum in the mail. We rotate the gallery annually, so if anyone would like to participate next spring, just drop your birdhouse in the mail. All of you are invited. And next spring, actually, the museum's been invited to the Hudgens Center for Art in Atlanta to exhibit the Avifauna as part of an exhibition called 3 Billion. The show is in response to this data released by Cornell about the staggering decline of the North American bird population. As you can see, we've lost 2.9 billion birds since the 1970s, and this devastation is due to a variety of reasons, including the loss of habitat. So this is this year's Avifauna. There's lots of great nesting boxes. We keep this diagram posted below the gallery to list the artists who made the boxes, the materials they use, where they are from, and who they made the box for. Down towards the ground, tucked amongst the perennial bed of tulips, is this small cedar box. This is our exhibit, Tulips, a game of chance. The box is on a cleat, so you can pick it up and take it to a sunny spot to play the card game that's inside of it. It includes a deck of letterpressed tulips, madder-dyed cloth as a game board, instructions, and a spinner. The gameplay for Tulips is just like the card game War. 2 opponents are playing against each other, and only one can win. The number of cards are equally distributed amongst players. Each player lays out a card at the same time from their deck without looking, and the player with the highest card takes both cards, slowly draining the other of their resources. This gameplay goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, chance governing the fate of both players, until one player has taken everything and has left the other with nothing. In a traditional card deck, the hierarchy of cards is established numerically and through a suite of royals. In the game of tulips, there are no numbers, there are no royals, there are just different colors of flowers. The hierarchy has to be set and reset by chance at the beginning of each game. The next exhibit here is called, "What is it like to be a bat?" And Thomas Nagel asked us this question in his 1974 paper on consciousness. He describes the difficulty in using reductive methods in science to probe subjective experience or consciousness, explaining that we still do not have a way of defining, measuring, or really understanding consciousness other than that we all seem to agree that we are experiencing it. And this experience is key. Nagel hinges the entire argument on describing consciousness as experience. In order for something to be conscious, there must be something it is like to be that something. Just like there is something that it must be like to be you, there is something it must be like to be me, and there must be something it is like to be a bat. At the museum, we built a space to cohabitate with the bats. What is it like to be a bat? Consists of a large bat roost, hoisted 20 feet in the air by a wooden post. Then here, towards the ground, is a small box mounted to the pole that looks very similar to the bat roost that hovers high above it. Inside this box is an ultrasonic bat detecting device hooked to a telephone. This device is a frequency mixer. It supplements our human hearing so that we might be able to hear the ultrasonic frequencies that are typically beyond our natural limits. Continuing further into the museum is How the World Eats Itself. This exhibit takes the form of a raised circular keyhole garden bed. A keyhole bed is a permaculture technique where soil is mounded in a circle, as you can see here. And then the very center of the bed is reserved for compost. The compost can then slowly leach out into the rest of the bed, where it feeds the plants that in return feed us. Here at the museum, we made a cross-section of that composting pile so that we can sit back and watch how the world eats itself. Our museum has an observatory. It's this picnic table, which is nestled into our Talking Trees orchard. This is an all-native species orchard featuring Chickasaw and beach plums, American hazelnuts, and a wide variety of rabbit's eye blueberries. But before you would get to any of the exhibits, right as you pass through the museum's garden gates, you would come up to the Library of Infinite Outcomes. This is our lending library of seeds. In the spring of 2001, Percy Smizer was found guilty by the Federal Court Division of Canada for the infringement of Monsanto's patent on their genetically engineered canola seeds. Smizer, a Saskatchewan farmer for over 50 years, has long participated in the practice of saving seeds, and this was his crime. It's a weird crime because saving seeds is a relationship that humans have fostered with domesticated plants for thousands of years. The history of canola is a history of collaboration. It's a history of cultivation and it's a history of care. Over time, the farmer shapes the canola, and the canola shapes the farmer. We believe that patents on seeds is a form of primitive accumulation. If you're not familiar with primitive accumulation, one of the historical examples is the enclosure of the commons in 15th century England. So in feudal times, the peasant class had common lands, which were cared for by everyone, and they were used to support their livelihood. But in order to switch from feudal times to a capital-driven market, wage laborers needed something that they could work towards. If they could support themselves off of the land, they would not be very stable workers in an industrial economy. Think about it. Once they had it up to here with your job, they could quit and they could support themselves. Thus, a fence was built. The commons were dissolved. The land became private property, the trees became lumber, and anything that could become capital became a commodity. This was vital in creating a capital-driven economy. Primitive accumulation, by definition, is the cutting of the ties between the producers and the means of production. It's patents on seeds, it's private property, it's the sharp knife that splits us from our environment. We invite you to join us. If you become a library member, you will be issued a library card in the form of this really cool patch. To become a member, you simply check out seeds, care for the seeds that you sow, and then return a portion of the harvested seeds that the plant offers up to continue the infinite game of reproduction. And in terms of reproduction, here, tucked behind the blueberry blossoms and winter berries, cradled in drapes of mulberry and kudzu, sits our publishing house. This is where we are in the process of refurbishing a traditional stone lithographic printing press. And I'd like to take a moment here to quote Donna Haraway, author, biologist, and distinguished professor in the History of Consciousness Department and Feminist Studies Department at the University of California, Santa Cruz, with, "It matters what matters we use to think other matters with. It matters what stories we tell to tell stories with. It matters what knots not knots, what thoughts think thoughts, what descriptions describe descriptions, what ties tie ties. It matters what stories make worlds, what worlds make stories." Mounted to the front of the publishing house is a series of publications. These are our literary companions to our exhibits. They are free to take home with you. Here we have publications such as What Is It Like to Be a Bat?, complete with instructions on how to have a more than human experience. We also have The Disappearing Bird, which gives instructions on how to attract disappearing birds to your very own front yard. And then there's our Welcome to the Museum pamphlet. Printed material provides a living library for what images, information, and stories are important enough to mechanize and distribute to the masses. Prints demonstrate that history is actually a form of storytelling, and it matters what stories we use to tell stories, because these stories slowly build our world. To collaborate means to work together. The museum encourages full participation in the world to which we belong. Through our Artist in Collaboration program, the museum hosts an artist each spring and each fall to make artworks on site and work collaboratively with the space. Last spring, we hosted Dana Potter. Potter is an assistant professor of interactive digital studies at the University of Northern Iowa. In her practice, She treats her art studio as more of a laboratory, where she tests biometrics and sensory technologies. She works with eye trackers and geolocation mapping and computer mouse movement recordings and facial recognition software to create data visualizations. Dana works in collaboration with technology, the technology that translates the physiological and behavioral characteristics of an individual into readable data. So this piece here is based off of a very old tool called a pantograph. A pantograph is a simple machine used to trace and enlarge. By attaching a pantograph to a computer mouse, Potter makes visible the often unseen tracking that occurs when we engage with digital devices. In her most recent work, Dana has been investigating the computer vision behind facial recognition. This comes through processing portraits of people, either using the logic of facial recognition algorithms or by using open source tools. Potter's research seeks to understand and therefore better resist the attention economy and surveillance capitalism. While at the museum, she kept very careful notes on the plants and biodiversity that surrounded her. These were used as data to make visualizations on keeping time. I see her work as a kind of hijacking of the technologies that are often employed by the attention economy and surveillance capitalism, the kind of reversing of the system to expose its cracks. And just this fall, we had our fall artist in collaboration, which was local painter and artist Lauren Farkas. Lauren works directly with kudzu, using the entire plant and composing pieces on site like this one. She harvests the kudzu that was lurking behind the publishing house and arranged compositions that had the privilege of composting back into the earth. Her kudzu paintings celebrate the complex beauty of a species that's often othered, inviting us to address the vine's personhood. She also made paper out of the kudzu vine and its roots, and then exhibited them in open air, suspended from the vine itself. The ink studies give us a closer look at the vast diversity of species that call the kudzu home. She writes, "The vine that ate the south has eaten me, and so I ate the vine from the inside out. We subsume in mutual company." And then here is where she made tea from the roots, inviting us in mutual company. So as I said before, the museum's collection meanders through sun-filled gardens, collaborating with the outside world to demonstrate that things in our reality can only exist in terms of relationships. But these gardens are also kept through collaborative practice. The food and medicine grown at the museum are public, and they are cared for through a fluid group of volunteers. If you'd like to get involved, send us an email or drop us a letter in the mail. We'd really love to hear from you. The museum seeks to foster material relationships because we do not believe that these relationships are optional. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. If anyone has any questions for Ashley, you can pop it in the Q&A and I will read it off. Someone asked, how can we learn to make natural paintings or natural paint?
That is the one thing that you'll have to ask Riley. Riley Douglas is the master of all of our natural paint and natural dye. So I will drop her email in the chat.
Somebody else asked, what is your favorite symbiotic relationship?
I feel like that changes every few days, but right now I'm really into lichen, and that's because lichen is an organism, one organism that's actually two organisms suspended together. So a lichen is an algae and a fungus that when they come together, they are working so symbiotically that we can no longer see the lines between those two organisms, and therefore they are now lichenized.
The next question is, do you ever offer workshops?
We haven't been offering workshops yet. The issue is that we opened in April, and we had all of these workshops planned, and now we are trying to figure out how to replan them for the next year. So I will keep you updated. Our website is museumofinfiniteoutcomes.com, and as far as I know, we are the only Museum of Infinite Outcomes. So if you type that into any kind of search engine, that'll come up.
The next question is, can one become a member of the library without being in the area, a digital library exchange, if you will?
Yeah, this is actually something that we've gotten a lot of questions on since we've been distancing more and more over the past year. And yes, you can send us seeds in the mail, and we can send you seeds in the mail, and we can just keep sending seeds back and forth in the mail. I think if you were overseas, customs gets kind of weird about it, but if you're in the States, then absolutely send us a message and we will send you seeds. You can send us seeds and we'll send you a really cool patch.
I just put the link to the website in the chat. Are there any other questions for Ashley?
I'm gonna put Riley's information in the chat as well. So if anybody has any natural dye questions, they can reach out directly to her.
Okay, it doesn't look like there's any more questions coming in. Ashley, thank you so much for sharing about the museum.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So that is all our speakers for today. Like I said, we will do the carbon footprint presentation in December. I want to thank everyone that attended today and to our two speakers in making this event possible. Thank you to Fox and Fogarty. I'm going to play, Luke has another message for you guys.
Thanks everyone for your support in this year's Keep Knoxville Beautiful Summit, and for your continued support of KKB. Because if you don't, you're basically supporting MKU, which is Make Knoxville Ugly. So, you know, there's that. So.
Luke is always great for some humor. There's so many learning opportunities out there. We do several, but there is other available. The City of Knoxville is hosting 2 workshops this afternoon on more tips on energy savings at home. It's in collaboration with the in collaboration with the Alliance for Saving Energy, I believe it is. I will pop that link in the chat. That is the conclusion of our event today. Thank you so much, and we hope you will attend next year. We'll see, maybe in person, probably virtual, we'll see. But thank you, everyone, and I will put that information in the chat.